You've tuned in to the show that celebrates life and all that makes it special. Sports, music, you, and of course, an ice-cold beer or a glass of your favorite wine. And now, today's story.
Hey everyone, welcome to the sports edition of Life, Sports, Music, and Beer. And very interesting panel today. By the way, before we get started, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, all that good stuff, so we can get back to you. If you have any questions, the email is right on the bottom. By the way, this entire segment, as a lot of our segments, are sponsored and brought to you by You and the Truth. So you might want to check it out on that podcast. So listen, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to bring in my two experts on sports. Tom Gatens. Tom, say hello.
How's everyone doing today, guys? It's good to be here. I'm excited because college football and college basketball are my two favorite sports. And this is the best time of the year, not just because of Christmas, not just because we have a lot to give thanks for, but because football is in its full glory.
I love it, buddy. I love it. Love the cap too. I got a few of those. I got to start wearing those again. I love them. And let me just introduce my host for today, Rick. It's always good to have you on, buddy. I'd love to hear you speak because you actually know what you're talking about as opposed to me. So you guys are a great combination. Rick, take it away, buddy.
All right. Well, obviously, I'm still grinning from ear to ear as my Michigan Wolverines have won 3 straight now against this team down here. And it is playoff time. It's championship week, man. I mean, this is what you play the whole year for. We had 2 amazing games last night, and that me and Tom are going to go over. The first one I want to cover, though, is the Liberty game. Liberty, New Mexico State. What a story by Liberty. New Mexico State, of course, has Jerry Kill. Those who are Big Ten fans remember him from Minnesota. You should have a weak spot for him as he had those seizures and strokes at Minnesota. So pretty much all of Big Ten Nation was rooting for him when he was unhealthy. So it's great to see him bring such a poor program like New Mexico State back to the forefront. So a hell of a year by him. Liberty, what else can you say? Undefeated season. They go 13-0. They're fighting for that last J1 spot or the January, the big bowls for the smaller outside the Power 5 conference. And it's going to pretty much come down to them and Tulane now. So they're probably rooting a certain way in that game. So great game again, back and forth. You're talking about points. I mean, we're talking 49-35 was the final. It's 84 points on your over-under, guys. I think they shattered that. So what did you take out of that, Tom? Both great universities. Really good to see Liberty, so new and so fresh, come in and be that new mid-major that's making noise.
Yeah, they're the new James Madison, right? And so what makes it interesting, and this is a kind of where the rubber meets the road. Liberty is that team that defines what college football is all about right now, and it's been for a long time. It's quarterback driven, right? And Caden Salter showed that last night. I mean, it was a phenomenal performance by him. But that's what he does, and that's what happens in college football. Typically, the best quarterback wins. But these two teams were pretty evenly matched. They're both, Liberty was I think 38th in total defense. New Mexico State was 48th. They were only 44th in offense, but Liberty was number 5 in total offense, and that was the difference because of Caden Salter. And what makes this impressive is that he was a dual threat quarterback, and you saw how that game ended with his efforts. And so watch them in the future, because keep in mind, remember, we had this phenom that came out in the NFL last year at a Liberty at quarterback, and now they just reloaded with Caden Salter. The point is, this is the type of place where good athletes can get great attention.
Mm-hmm. And Ralph, you'll love this. They are a Christian school, so that's Liberty is based on faith too, if I remember right. So again, great story, great program, up and coming. You're going to hear from them for years to come because it's all about recruiting. And when you go undefeated, you're gonna see some recruiing.
Hey guys,
if you've ever been to a campus, that's one of the most beautiful campuses. If you riding up on the west side of Virginia through almost on the edge of the Shenandoah, you've got Liberty University. It's a beautiful place, and I'm just going to give a shout out to David Corey, who's their former executive counsel. A good friend of mine went to college with, and he just texts me all the time about how great and how much fun it is to be in that area.
I would love to go see it.
You know,
Go
that's
ahead,
awesome to see. Let me show my ignorance. If Liberty is 13-0,
Mhm.
why are they not ranked? I mean, are they a small school?
Strength
How
of
does-
schedule. Strength of schedule.
Strength of schedule.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, but 13-0. I mean, shouldn't they
Ye-
be given a shot at
See,
something? I mean,
so this is where, Ralph, this is where we've been clamoring for a 12-team, 18, 12-team playoff for a long time. Next year it's in. This year it would have been a beautiful time because you would have had the Tulane, you would have had Liberty, you would have had a few other teams that edge into that top 12, and it would have given more courage to the pollsters to give these teams a chance, because this is what happens. This is
Absolutely.
what makes. Remember, earlier on, I mentioned about how great I love the NCAA basketball as a sport as well. And the reason people do is because March Madness. A little Princeton can beat a big North Carolina, right? And this is what college sports is about. And when we get to that 12-team playoff, you're going to have the entry of some teams that have had great success at lower level competition against these Power 5 conferences, and we're going to be moving into the super conference world where it's going to be a little bit more difficult. However, I still think it's going to give opportunity to teams like Liberty and James Madison. See, James Madison is undefeated too, but
Yes.
they're held out of the playoff by a stupid rule that requires you
Yes.
to have to be in the top divisions for 2 years prior to getting a grant to the higher bowl.
who comes up with these
competition.
stupid rules?
Oh, the communistic
NCAA.
party called the NCAA. Yeah.
Communistic Party. I love that.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's a National
it's true.
Communist
Bosworth had it
Association.
right when he wore that shirt back in the '80s. They need to
Yes.
abolish the NCAA.
Well, they
I'll
are.
say
It's feckless. It has no power. It's over. It's done. There's going to be a new apparatus that's created here in the next 12 to 18 months that's replacing it.
But
Yeah.
I thought it was National Collegiate. I didn't know Riga was National.
Oh, I've got the shirt.
Communist,
National
yes,
Communist. I
National
should have
Communist
wore it for this
Association,
podcast, but yeah.
Sorry, gentlemen.
That's
Go
all
right ahead.
And also, just to add on to that, Tom, that James Madison almost went to court for antitrust on them on the NCAA for this, but they backed off of it. The game of the night, obviously, the game of the year was last night as well. Really interesting. They put it on a Friday night. Great marketing for them to have their own spot. But Washington and Oregon, second meeting, almost the same result. 3 points.
I mean, almost identical. Yes.
Identical game. In my opinion, really took Bo Nix out of the running for Heisman. I think the kid's great. This is no knock on him. It's just he had his moment on prime time to show everybody why he should be Heisman, and he didn't do it. Michael Penix, however, had 319 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, QBR rating at 87.8. But Bo Nix went 21 of 34, 239, and you're going to say, wow, numbers are low, but he still had three touchdowns and a pick. I mean, it's not like he was terrible. But when you have that moment, you need to be about 370 with about 4 touchdowns and no picks. That's a Heisman moment.
I will tell you, Rick, my opinion of this game going into it, and we were talking about trying to get this production done sooner so we could talk about this game. And what I was going to refer to is one of the problems that Oregon had this year was Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a phenomenal quarterback, but he's always had an issue here from his days at Auburn and today. I mean, and it showed last night. Under pressure, he shrinks a little bit, right? And this has been his MO. And I think NFL scouts will notice this. I'll tell you what he's great at. And this is why this game was so exciting, because you had 2 of the best coaches in the nation. You had Lanning at Oregon and you had DeBoer at Washington. And what's beautiful is this is what Lanning understands. He understands his personnel and says, okay, how can I get the best out of Bo Nix? And he did this. Oregon was number 1 in the nation in yards after catch, which means Bo Nix actually had the shortest amount of time in the nation holding the ball. He would get it out fast, whether it was to his running back, tight end, or wide receivers, a great core of wide receivers. And so what they did is they extended the field by getting the ball. It increased his percentage to like a 72% completion percentage. But what was so different was on third down, his completion percentage dropped to like 52%.
Yeah, because he had to throw over 5 yards.
Exactly. And so this changed the dynamic of this game. This is why I really felt Washington came into this game really primed to win. And here's why. Because the first 6 games of the year, they barely used Dylan Johnson, which is their secret weapon, their running back. Now, Penix is I agree with you. Penix is in head-to-head with Daniels from LSU for the Heisman, but Dylan Johnson is the MVP for the season. The last 6 games of the season for Washington, he's averaged over 100 yards, and it's been not quite 100 yards, but it's been close. He was like 68 yards to 98 yards, whatever it is. But he's been phenomenal. Here's the thing: Penix had 10 of his 12 games were 300 yards, and he did it again last night. Phenomenal. Again, another Big Ten transfer, right? But
Yeah.
Dylan Johnson is if you're a fantasy football kid or a person, next year he is going to be a dynamic, or in 2 years he's going to be a dynamic player in the NFL. The guy is incredibly talented. Here was the difference of the game: running outside the tackles, and that's what won the game for Washington. Passing the ball well, great game, but carbon copy of game 1. And this is why DeBoer is the most underrated coach in college right now.
Oh, he's on our radar. If the Harbaugh thing goes like we think, and he's going to the NFL, DeBoer's number 1 on our hit list. So
he's also number 1 on Ohio State's hit list.
Yeah, I know.
There's rumblings and bumblings in Columbus.
Yes, lots. Yes, and also since we couldn't do the preview of the game, I laid heavy on Washington last night, and I'll tell you why. The blatant disrespect of that spread to me was bulletin board music all week. You're almost a 10-point underdog against a team you've already beat, and you're the one undefeated, and everybody said you have no chance. That's ridiculous to me.
And to your point, of the last 8 games in this circumstance, the team that won the first match is 7-1. So this is the prognosticators ignoring their own statistics, which makes no sense, which, to your point, leads to the bias. The funny thing is, Washington has the best record in the nation against 8-4 or better teams.
Yeah.
So and here's the other factor, and this is why I was so strong on Washington too, and that is that they played character games, meaning they had 7 games within 1 score. That builds character for a team. It tells you a team that stays mentally tough to the very last whistle for the last tick of the clock. I want a mentally tough team, and that's what DeBoer creates, and that's why this team, Washington, be careful, everybody, because they are mentally tough, and that's half the game. 90% of the game is mental, or 90% of the game is half mental, right, Yogi?
Yeah, Yogi. Yeah. Yep, I loved it. That's a 3rd straight game in that series that has been decided by 3 points. So that's a heck of a series going forward too, when they both come to the Big Ten next year, which is going to load that conference.
Hey guys, let me pick your brain here for a second. Based on human, from what I see on all these things and all these standings, and look, what you just mentioned, when you have the human factor involved, people picking, there's a committee that picks this, chooses that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see in the future as far as AI having a say in schedules and standings and these types of decisions? You see what I'm saying? Rather than put it in the hands. Yeah.
I think we've gone away from that because we used to have the percentages. We used to have the calculated one. And it'll come back, I'm sure, but it's gonna ruin it again. To Tom's point, I love the 12 because you can't argue if you're at 13 going, I should be in. Then don't lose 2 games. That's the bottom line on that. That's no longer politics. You've lost 2 games. You don't deserve anything, really. You're lucky if you're fighting for 12 at that point. So undefeated,
No, Rick, you're exactly right. And what's going to happen with the super conferences? There's going to be more of a meat grinder reality to this. So more teams are going to have 2 and 3 losses that are excellent programs, but because they're playing a meat grinder conference. I mean, look at the Big Ten the way it is right now. They're 9-0 in the last 9 games on the East versus the West in the Big Ten, which means that even a quality team in the Big Ten West is not going to beat the champion from the East because of the meat grinder reality. It raises the elevation, it elevates the play. And this is one of the things they're seeing. So while AI can help in scheduling in terms of trying to create more parity of schedule, ultimately the conferences want to do that anyway. These super conferences. So in fact, that's why the Big Ten has grabbed Oregon and Washington, is because, and USC, the reality is UCLA, those movements of those teams help elevate the parity within the conferences potentially down the road.
For sure. For sure. It's going to take away a little bit of the tradition. Us Big Ten folks have been talking about it because the problem is Michigan and Ohio State could play each other 3 times in 1 year now. And they're going to move that game.
Again, back to the preference. The first thing I said, college football and college basketball are my 2 favorite sports. I don't know if I'm going to like the future of college football. I do not like the NIL era. I do not like this free agency that we have in college football. I think it pits player against coach. And the reality is, I think it's going to be to the detriment of the quality of the product going forward. I'm not a fan of it. I understand. But this is, again, back to the NCAA. The NCAA ignored the problem for decades and decades. Yeah. And instead of addressing it with a reasonable solution, it became a Wild West. And there was no law, no order, no semblance of reality. And here we are today. I mean, look at this. The Pac-10 became the conference of great quarterbacks. And yet none of those great quarterbacks originated in the Pac-12.
Right. Yeah, true. Very true. So we will jump into today's games. The first one, well, there's a couple at noon. First one we're going to talk about is Toledo and Miami, Battle of Ohio, basically at this point. 2 really good MAC schools. Miami of Ohio is beautiful. If you've never been there, go look at that place. It's the Ivy League of the Midwest is what they call it. It's beautiful. I've got Miami. So the last time these 2 teams met in 2004, looks like the Red Hawks actually, Toledo's got chances to win back-to-back for the first time since 2004, I believe. Tight games, 21-17 was their first meeting. I expect the same. Miami's got to bloody this up. They've got to make it more of a Big Ten 1930s game and ground and pound because Toledo's weapons are legit. So I'll let Tom talk about Toledo. The spread on this, we were going to talk about this as well. Don't bank on me for your financial advice, but getting 8, I like Miami of Ohio today getting 8. I will say that.
Yes, to your point, on the spread, I'm totally in concurrence with you on that. The reality is this is going to be a grinded game. These 2 teams are so evenly matched. I think Miami is around 24th in total defense. Toledo's about 32nd. So they both bring a good defense into the game. I think the difference, and this will be the end result, is that Toledo has a more dynamic offense. Mm-hmm. I think they have probably one of the best running backs that no one's ever heard of in Perry Boone. And they also have the ability to get to the quarterback. And I think that their havoc rate on defense, I think that will be the difference of this game is negative yardage that they create when Miami has the ball. Toledo's defense is 3 layers deep. They have good players in each grouping. And I think that's going to be the difference in this ultimate game. I think it's going to be a 23-20 game. Toledo wins. That's kind of how I play that.
I like it. Daquan Finn, of course, their quarterback at Toledo, he's explosive too. 21 touchdowns, 8 picks. He's got 530 rushing and 6 touchdowns on the ground too. So he's a typical Toledo guy. I mean, if you've watched Toledo over the last 10 years, they're explosive on offense. For us to be talking about their defense is a rarity. So that's right. Why they're a balanced team this year.
Well, to your point about the balance, they're 32nd in offense and 32nd in defense. Exactly. I mean, that is perfect balance, right? And so the reality is, and to your point, and this is, back to a point I'll reiterate probably 5 more times in this telecast, and that is that the quarterback is the most important position on the field. Yes. He is the leader. He's the coach on the field because we don't do headsets. So he has to manage the game mentally, right? With fewer turnovers, holding on the ball. Every one of these games is going to come down to turnovers, right? And so this is the element of this game. Who can hold the ball? Because a turnover in this game is going to be consequential. But to your point, that dual threat quarterback puts enormous pressure on a defense. So much pressure
on the secondary, especially. Yep.
Yes.
So that game's going on in Detroit. Ford Field MAC championship always gets held there, which I think is cool. I've been to a couple. It's good time. Also at noon, this one's much more important to the playoff standings. You got Texas, Oklahoma State in Dallas at Jerry Jones's house. If they put 100,000 in that, which they will easily probably, because Texas travels. trust. So, I've got Oklahoma State in this one. They need Barry Sanders to win this one, I think, but we'll go ahead and give them a shot because the pollsters sure don't. They're a 14-point dog.
So when you say you're going to take Oklahoma State, you mean it just in the spread, not in the final victory?
Correct. Just in the spread.
Okay.
I do not have them winning this game, but I'll take the 2 touchdowns. And anytime you give me double digits in a conference title game, I'm taking a look at it. I'm taking a look at the dog. Oklahoma State can run the ball again. That's what I'm looking for, is to eat clock. If you're taking double digit dogs, can they keep possession and eat clock? If they're running team, I love them against a big spread. That's just me. A lot on the line for Texas. Ewers and the boys, so I'll let Tom take over Texas, but I'll take Oklahoma State to lose a close one, but cover the spread on 14.
So I'll disagree a little bit. I think this is going to be a surprise, and this is why. Again, I think this offense that Texas has is ridiculous, and it's finally getting into its groove. The efficiency of Ewers, his accuracy has night and day difference between the first half and the last half of the season, despite him even winning the game against Alabama, quality competition. I think their defense is going to come play. Their secondary is really strong. And, well, I do agree with you. I think Oklahoma State is that Cinderella story this year. I think it's the most underrated good performance team of the year, and they're playing really well at this time. But I think Texas is on all cylinders. And I think between this tandem running back of Baxter and Blue, and these are their second and third string running backs because Brooks got hurt at the beginning of the season. Yeah. This team is so ridiculously balanced, and it has some of the most talented wide receivers in Xavier Worthy and crew. I think this team can put up 48. I see a 48-24 game. I think it's once the game gets almost to 10, 12, 14 points, I think Oklahoma State quits. And I think Texas puts the pedal to the metal. And I think they want to make a statement going into because remember, let me just go back to this for just a second, because I think this needs to be addressed before we jump too much further. I just want to say this. So because of that reality of what we're seeing here, and I just want to go over these numbers real fast. You got Georgia, if they win, they're in. Michigan, if they win, they're in. Washington, they won, they're in. Mm-hmm. Florida State wins, they're in. And Oregon had to win to try to even get in, right? But they didn't win. So ultimately, Ohio State needs Michigan to lose. Ohio State needs Michigan to win, Georgia to win, Washington to win, and Florida State to lose, and Texas to lose. So, obviously, there's some people rooting out there against Texas today.
Yes.
But Texas needs an upset. So there is huge motivation in that room. They need an upset. They need one of those top teams to be upset. If that doesn't happen, Texas goes home. So this is a statement game from them. They need to make people believe that they're being screwed. And so I think that's going to be this motivation that Sarkisian has on this team to say, guys, don't let up. Don't let up.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like it a lot. And I agree with you 100% on that. They have to cover that spread at the very least, in my opinion. Because even if we'll get into it when we get to Florida State, but Texas needs to put down a 35-14 kind of performance, in my opinion. It needs to be dominating. It needs to be in your face. But
and let me just add to your point. What people don't pay attention to sometimes is those deeper stats. And here's one of those stats on that defense. The defensive line of Texas is phenomenal, but they also bring it off the edge with linebacker blitzing. They're number one in the nation in third down defense. And that's, as we all know, we're football geeks. Third down defense is the most important part of a team's makeup in terms on the defensive side of the ball. If you can stop teams on third down, if on down and distance, you're winning that battle, you're going to win games.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Let's go to the next game. Probably not as much on our radar, unless you're a Boise State fan. Boise State, UNLV. What I thought was interesting is when everybody talked about, and I got to give props to my son on this, we played UNLV as one of our week first games. Well, they're in the title now for their conference. My son kept going, Dad, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. We're their only loss. And then they lost right before this to San Jose State. But tell you what, sneaky good team that actually strengthened Michigan's schedule when you look at it now. Everybody said we didn't play anybody. Well, if nobody's a conference title winner, that I guess that's a pretty good nobody, But this game, I'm a big Boise dude. I love Boise State. Amazing to me how you can make your conference championship after firing your coach midseason. That's amazing to me. That's Boise State did that this year. So, going to be a great game. Obviously, the pollsters think so too. It's a neutral field. It's a 3-point spread. This is going to come down to the end. Who's got the more experience being there? I like Boise covering the 3. They've been there, done that for years. So that's just my take on that. What do you got with UNLV, Tom?
To your point on the spread, UNLV is a spread dynamo. I mean, this is a bettor's dream. They're 6-1-1 against the spread this year at home. And so this kind of plays into that bettor's play. This game may not turn out the way people expect, but expect UNLV to cover the spread. I mean, it's almost a lock. But I will say this. Boise State has an amazing pass defense. And so this is strength against strength because
yes.
Jaden Miava, however you pronounce him, Maeva, is another great dual threat quarterback. In the last, I think, 3 games, he's had like 7 rushing and 10 passing TDs, maybe 4 games, so whatever it is. But he's playing at an incredibly high level. And football is a game of streaks, right? You feel it. It's like golf. You feel it or you don't. And a quarterback feels it. Right now, he's feeling it. And until that Boise State defense takes him out of his comfort zone. And again, this is a coaching decision, right? You've got to utilize your strength. This is Boise State to change that the vision that he's so comfortable right now. You've got to change the vision. You've got to move you've got to move from a zone to a man read and switch back out. You've got to do things that'll disrupt UNLV. They're on a hot streak in terms of success. So I think they'll end up winning this game, but I think you're right. I think it'll be, again, let me just make one quick point on this. Again, 2 good offenses, not great defenses, right? Yeah. UNLV is number 40 in offense. Boise's number 28. So these teams will put up points. I think it'll be like a 38-35 type game.
Sounds like the over is a good play here then.
I think so.
Fun stat on this one. UNLV hasn't won in this series since 1970.
Okay, Rick, lost your audio there.
Oh, you did? Oh, hold on.
Okay, that's good. You're back.
You did?
Yep.
You got it? All right.
Yep.
A fun fact I was saying, Ralph, UNLV hasn't won in this series since 1977. So there's all kinds of motivation to be the first for that program to win that game. So you're right. There's a lot of hidden factors here. I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. I think it's going to be a last possession type game, which is always great. So next one on the slate, and somehow you made me cover Appalachian State, who, as you know, with the hat I'm wearing, why I would not want to cover Appalachian State ever. But another good game. People don't know a lot about Troy. Troy was a great 1AA program that was just like App State in infancy, coming in, beating teams, or at least playing everybody. They were playing everybody.
Yes.
And now they've come into their own. They're finally there. App State, we know what they are. That's a powerhouse program that's starting to make noise in the big boys conference now because they're that good. And again, they get the recruiting, they get the throwaways nobody wants, and they turn them from 3 stars into 4 and 5 stars and send them a lot of these guys to the league, which is amazing. So this game is amazing because the Sun Belt this year has 12 bowl eligible teams. Talking about a conference that has turned it around completely, that's an amazing number. It's 6.5. Troy is favored in this game by 6.5. I've got App State because I'm covering App State. So I'll take the 6.5. App State always finds ways. They're sneaky good. They always have a linebacker or 2 that you've never heard of that tears it up. Offensively,
and they always have special teams. They're always a special teams dynamo. They always have a little 5'7", 170-pound guy who can do magic, right? And you Michigan fans know this all too well, right?
Yep.
So to your point about this game, this is going to be a fun game to watch the havoc rate that Troy brings on defense, I think, will ultimately be the difference maker. They're the number 12 defense in the nation. App State is always a dynamic offense. They're always
Yes.
an exciting team to watch. But I think defense wins championship games.
Yep.
And I've always felt that. So Troy, I think, will win the game, but I think you're right. I think App State will cover. But here's the thing. Again, it's all about leadership. One of the great names in college football right now is the quarterback for Troy, Gunnar Watson, right? And he's phenomenal. But then you also have Kimani Vidal at running back. You've got a double hit. So while they're not quite as good as App State in terms of its overall offensive look, I think though that tandem will lead them to victory with their strong defense. They're just terrific. And again, the third down defense, which I just want to point out again, this is what makes them good, is 15th in the nation. And that's going to be holding App State on third down is going to be what wins this game for them.
That's big. And also App State's quarterback, Joey Aguilar, he's got 3 touchdowns in his last on their 5-game win streak, at least 3 every game. So you're right. They're explosive. They're the same old App State. These are all good games to watch today, guys, honestly, in my opinion. You know, if you're bored and you're flipping around, watch one of these smaller college games. They're fantastic.
Yes. And by the way, since we're talking about the Sun Belt, that's why I have the sunlight bearing in on me right now. It's
nice.
Something
Nice.
I can't block at this point. So sorry about my glare is causing people some strains.
What that really means is that's a new segment for us. It's called the Golden Picks are coming up, which means bank your house on it.
Exactly.
And
Well, listen, Tom, at least you've got sunshine coming in. You know, I'm down here in Miami, so it's beautiful weather. Now, Rick.
Okay,
Rick
don't
is-
talk, Ralph. That's why you're a producer today. I don't see you on screen now, which is beautiful.
Yeah, Rick
Ain't no
doesn't.
sunshine. when
That's
I'm
right.
gone.
That's
Rick
right.
has no idea what sunshine looks like
There's
at
going
this
to be
time of year.
sunshine in Indy, but it's going to be
Well, I'm
about
sorry.
32 and sunny. Yeah.
Hey, Ralph, if you start seeing animals pair up down Miami into 50 inches over normal rain, could you let us know? I want to be prepared.
I will do
I
that.
will go into the ARC selling business real quick.
So are we on the Tulane game next? Is that where we're going?
Let's see. No. Yes. Sorry, I went
SMU
backwards.
Tulane,
You are
yep.
correct. Yes, Tulane.
Yep.
Tulane SMU 4:00 game in New Orleans. Number 12. Great game, by the way. 2 ranked teams.
Oh.
This
Oh,
is what
yeah.
we were talking about. Tulane needs this bad. Guys, when
Yep.
we say they need it bad, obviously they can't go to the playoffs. That's not what we're referring to. But do you know the money difference on a J1 game or for
Yes.
these schools like a Tulane or an SMU?
Yes.
It's significant, or Liberty, like we were saying. It's really down to Tulane and Liberty. But
Yep.
it's significant for the program. Trust me on this. I've got SMU. SMU's getting 4 in this game. They've been a great surprise under Rhett Lashley. They rank 5th in the FBS in scoring offense at almost 42 a game. That's a fun offense, folks. You want to see some speed and space and some wide receivers, watch that game. They not quite Washington's wide receivers because all 3 of them are going to the league, but you want to see a fun, like an old Houston type offense, watch some SMU today. But I'll give it over to you. I'll take SMU.
Rick, I would just add to your point. They've got the most balanced team. They're 13th in defense and 9th in offense, and they're 4th and 3rd down defense.
In scoring
So
defense.
This team is fantastic. I mean, SMU is fantastic. But let me talk about Tulane, and I've got a little bias here. My sister went to Tulane, so I've been following Tulane since 1974.
Nice.
In the bad, ugly years and in these glory years of recent times. They've had 3 resurgence over the last 20 years, and it's been fun to watch. You may remember of Bowden, who played there or was coached there for a while, who brought the team back as well. And they've put a ton of good players into the NFL. And next year they're going to put 2 more. They're going to put 2 greats in the NFL. I'm not sure where they'll fall, but they will both be successful NFLers. Pratt is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. In fact, he's so good. He's 14-0 in his last 14 games. He did not play against Ole Miss, so he is not there. And he's averaging 2.5 touchdowns per game. But that is not just where their offense rests. I mean, their defense is 29th. Their defensive third down conversion protection is good. Not as good as SMU's at 36 is Tulane to the 4th for SMU. But Mekhi Hughes is a stud running back. And when those two play, that dynamic offense is difficult to beat. Even though SMU has a better offense, I think in terms of leadership on the offense, it's hard to beat Pratt. And I'm going to take the points with this surprisingly, because if I was just looking at the numbers, pure numbers, I'm going SMU all the way, giving the points and taking SMU, because I think this is a bettor's dream, because perception is reality, and the perception is this game should be SMU's. But surprisingly, Tulane's defense, while it's not a great defense at 29, it's havoc rate in sacks, make big plays, and their special teams are solid. And this is what's going to lead them over the edge. I think I'm going to give it to Tulane.
I like it. All right, next up, maybe the biggest one of the weekend. You got Georgia, Alabama. I don't know what else to say about this game except it's Georgia, Alabama. You have probably the best tight end of the nation, maybe the second best player in college at Georgia, behind Marv Harrison Jr., who I got to see up close and personal. That kid's a stud. So, I mean, there's not a lot to talk about with this. Georgia's lost their last 4 meetings, or 3, I guess, in the SEC title game to Alabama. You know, we count Alabama out and they find ways, and the committee wants them to find a way. Trust me. So ESPN sure would. I mean, for 2 SEC teams to back in, which I don't think can happen, but I never say never with the SEC anymore. So I've got Georgia dropping the 5, though. I think they get over the hump this year. They're built different. They're peaking at the right time, and they're finally healthy, which is the biggest part for Georgia right now.
Well, so to your point, I think it comes down to how well Bowers can play with that ankle. And don't forget McConkey, right? I mean, so 2 of their weapons are in jeopardy. We don't know how healthy they are. You got to assume they're healthy and ready to go. But if there's any attention to their ankles, I think Bama may get the edge. And here's why I think they get the edge. Milroe sucked at the beginning of the season.
They did. They were benching him.
Then he moves – in the last 6 games, he moves into being one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the nation. And give credit to the Alabama brain trust to look and say, what does this guy do well? He runs the ball. He runs the ball so effectively, but not because of his size, but he's fast for that size, and he punishes the defense. But this has also been the weakness of Georgia this year, and this is where the game's going to come in. Georgia has suffered and had too many close games for this team that's 29-0, right?
Right.
In its last 3 years. So the reality is the teams that they struggle with, Georgia struggles with, are teams with dynamic quarterbacks, running quarterbacks, the games that make it close. So then it's going to come down to turnovers. Ultimately, you got a defense. Georgia is number 9 in total defense. Alabama is number 17. They were horrible at the beginning of the season. Look at the game against Texas. They've improved over the last 6 games. You've got an offense. Here's the thing, to your point. The offense of Georgia, number 6 in the nation, great receivers, good running back tandem, enormously strong offensive line. And they have Beck, who's probably the most efficient quarterback in the nation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But their third down defense is what makes them so special. And this is where it will come down. Can Milroe move the chains on third down versus the number 2 best third down defense in the nation? But this is why it matters, because those running quarterbacks create a different dynamic when you're playing third down defense. If it's third and if you're moving the ball in pace and you're getting 4 yards, and you make it a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, I think Alabama ends up winning this game. And the reason they will is because of Milroe and the fact that they are sack specialists. Their defense is excellent on havoc defense plays, and third down focus is good too. They're 25, but it's not as good as the number 2 for Georgia. But here's the thing. That pressure they're going to get on Beck. Beck has not seen great pressure. They played the weakest schedule in the SEC. And I think this comes out to haunt them, because what happens is when you don't have – remember I talked about that character of close games.
Yeah, when you're
Georgia
not tested. Yeah.
Georgia has that, but they haven't been tested against great teams. They've been tested against mediocre teams.
Right.
So I think Bama – and this is going to be the coaching match, right? It's going to be the 2 supposed best coaches in college football, one who is the best coach, Hall of Famer, and one who's about to be Hall of Fame ready because of his success over the last 3 years. We'll see which coach comes up with enough wrinkles to put their team over the edge. I think Bama covers.
Okay.
I think they may end up losing 26-23.
Like a field goal, yeah. But so Milroe had a 69.4 completion percentage and averaged 6.1 yards per carry in November. That's the question. Can he keep it up? And to your point, Carson's bet is 72.4%.
Yeah,
so
ridiculous.
You're right.
7 out of every. And by the way, it's not just dink and dunks. I mean, to your point,
they throw long balls.
He's not throwing to a tight end who does a 5-yard curl like Benny Cunningham and Pittsburgh Steelers. He's throwing to Bowers, who's catching the ball 16 yards down the field.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's amazing.
And McConkey, I'll tell you what, that kid has done everything they've asked of him. That's just one of those feel-good stories. The guy's just a gamer. He's not blazing. He's not this. He's not that. He's just everything.
Yep.
And he does it in a workman-like fashion, kind of like his dad, if you guys remember him from the Giants.
I loved him. So let me put one more piece in the puzzle. Even though I said I think Georgia will win but not cover, I will say this: Georgia has everything to lose, and Alabama has everything to win. And how that plays. So when you put that into the locker room talk and the pregame preparation of the greatest college football coach of our lifetime, even though I can't stand Saban, the guy is ridiculously good. And when he has his team's up against the wall, right? And this may be his swan song, right? I mean, he may decide to hang it up after this year, and he's going to give every ounce of coaching acumen he has to bring and bear on the witness of this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Good stuff. And since we went that way, I want to lead into the Michigan game because I think a lot of the point spread on this is very much dependent on the Georgia-Alabama game. Let me give you a reason why. Bottom line is if Georgia wins, they're not going to lose that one spot, period. It doesn't matter if they win by 2, 1, 3, or 50. Doesn't matter. Now, if they lose that game and Michigan goes out and blasts Iowa by 42, guess who's going to be number one? You can't not put them at number one at that point. So as far as the betting goes for you bettors out there, 23 is great if Alabama wins that game. If Alabama wins that game, it's a lock at 23, I'm promising you, because we won't pull off. There will be no pull off. It's Harbaugh's back after all the controversy. He's back. We have one of the best offenses I've ever seen in my lifetime at Michigan with the balance we have. We may have the second or third best tight end in college with Cortland, and we have a transfer from Indiana who's a stud as well. Our running backs are probably second to none if you put Corum and Edwards together against anybody in this nation. As far as Corum's the only player in FBS to score in every game this year. He's got a touchdown in every game this year. That's hard to do. We didn't play a lot of people, so I get it. Our defense hasn't been tested. And I told Ohio State fans the same thing, that we're paper champions when it comes to defense right now because we just don't know. And that's being honest. We have pieces. We have one of the best secondaries in the nation too, but we haven't been tested. Iowa's not going to be the one to test us today. I'm leaving for that game. I will be at the game and video to come, but I like Michigan probably 35-7, 35-6 in that range tonight. I don't even know if Iowa scores. Their over-under on points just by Iowa tonight is 6.5. That's so sad.
And the lock is the under on those points. My point is they are not going to score a touchdown. Iowa's not going to score a touchdown. They have the last rated offense in college football. The last.
Yes.
Michigan's the second rated defense. Now, granted, I'm going to wax a little bit annoyance here that I think the cheating scandal was real, and I think it was dynamic, and I think it really helped Michigan prep for their games and prepare for their games. Obviously, it did not against Ohio State. They demonstrated that they can bring everything to bear against Ohio State. In this game, I don't think the previous games were legitimately decided. I think this game 100% was, and that's the Michigan you're going to see tomorrow or today.
Mhm.
And the reality is Iowa is as bad as everyone thinks. This is the most unique 10-win team in college
Yes,
football history.
ever.
They are horrible. They are lucky. The funny thing is they're not even dynamic. They have really good players on defense.
Yes.
They have really good players on defense, but they don't win the turnover margin, which is
No.
how you usually win on defense. They don't do the things that you usually do. They don't have a great third down defense proficiency. They just somehow make enough plays to win these games. It's really the most strange statistical analysis team in college football history. But
It is.
I'm not going to belabor it because it makes no sense. 42-3 was the
Okay.
21 score when they played in 2021. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be about the same, 42-3, because I think J.J. McCarthy is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks. And to your point, listen, he didn't throw a touchdown in the last 4 games.
Three
like that.
games, going into the Ohio State game.
Going
Yep.
into the Ohio State game.
Yep.
But they didn't need it because they have
Nope.
Blake Corum and they
Yes.
have Donovan
Yep.
Edwards. They have this great tandem. The reality is, between their balance and the receivers, their tight ends, there's no stopping Michigan because Iowa just doesn't have the will to win this
No.
game. It is the David versus Goliath, but unfortunately, Goliath's going to win this one.
And to your point
Going
on the running,
away.
on the
Going away.
running quarterback situation, I think you're going to see a lot of JJ read zone on the and pull tonight. He's going to run the ball a lot tonight, I have a feeling. And he's
in fact,
dynamic as all get out when he gets in the open field.
I think he may be scoring 3 hours after the game ends. And I mean that is Iowa's going to be exposed for the reality. Again, two things are real here. They played a horrible schedule of the West, right? It was no great team in the West. Wisconsin, who used to be a solid team, is a mediocre team right now. Minnesota's a mediocre team. You name it, across the West of the Big 12, Big 10, there is nothing. And Iowa is an example of that is the problem with this type of structure that we have. This is one of the weaknesses. And they're going to be totally exposed this evening. Next game.
I wanted to throw a number out for you, though, real quick, because you're talking about the most amazing 10-win team of all time. They weren't even averaging 250 yards a game, and they won 10 games. The last team to do that, the highest wins for any team to go through a season like that, was Coastal Carolina with 4 wins. I mean,
it's unbelievable.
It's the craziest stat ever. All right.
Yep.
So here we go. This probably is for the 4th spot in the playoffs, I would think, tonight. It's Louisville, in Florida State. I've got Louisville, and I'll tell you why. We don't even know if the backup for Florida State's healthy. It may be a freshman thrown to the Wolves tonight. Don't care how good he is. Conference championship playoff on the line. You're 18. You're drying your leg after it. Let's put it that way. You're going to be peeing down it because you're not ready for this moment. I don't care who you are. I'm sorry. If that offends anybody, so be it. He's not ready, guys. If the backup's not in, Florida State's in for a long night. It's just bottom line on that. Louisville is not a joke. Louisville just had a couple of hiccups, which they shouldn't have had, or we'd be talking about them with one loss possibly being right there too. Their hiccups happened against a pathetic Pitt team, so I don't know how they lost that game. And then, of course, lost a heartbreaker in a rivalry game with Kentucky last week. So, lots of chaos factors in this. Brom, we'll see how he does. He's been a little underwhelming too for me with the name and the weight he carries, but we'll see what he does tonight. Again, if Rodemaker doesn't go, this game's a lock for Louisville. So give me the 3.5 and I'll take Louisville on that.
I think you're right. I think people are going to find this to be maybe the best game of the day. Two great defenses, two dynamic defenses. Louisville's number 19, Florida State's number 20. And why does that matter? Because they both played really good schedules. And I think that Pitt loss, let me just wax optimistic for Louisville for a second and say that Pitt loss, remember, came after the upset against Notre Dame. So it's tough to be emotionally up. Game after game. And that's one of the tough things that a tough schedule puts in your way. But so Rodemaker is a game manager. If he's in there, he's 5 TDs against 0 interceptions, but he's going up against a great secondary. and a team that creates a lot of havoc from their defensive ends.
Mhm.
So, by the way, the Louisville defense is really good. But to your point, if Glenn is the quarterback, Brock Glenn, who was a 5-star quarterback transfer from Ohio State or commitment, who changed his commitment to FSU at the last second,
Right.
but the kid is really talented. He hasn't played much, right? And
Right.
this is the problem. So when you haven't played much, the schemes that Louisville can put out there could be very dangerous. But here's the problem. FSU has an amazingly good and gifted set of skill players. The receivers, they've got 3 great receivers. They have one who's exceptionally tall, 6'7", just a red zone threat. Fantastic
Yes.
in the red zone. You've got a running game with Benson who's terrific, and he fights for extra yardage. This game's going to come down to turnovers. And here's where I think Florida State's still going to end up winning the game is because Jake Plummer sucks as a game manager. He is a turnover machine at the worst moments. He's kind of like Bo Nix when Bo Nix was at Auburn.
Yeah.
He may have a better team and prepared. The team may be ready to win the game, and he has the capacity to steal a defeat out of the jaws of victory. And so I think the game's going to get close down to the end. Here's the interesting part. Again, I talked about character perseverance due to tough games. Florida State has been down in the last 3 games to start the game. They were down 6, down 12, and down 14 in the last 3 games, and they came back to win. That's not just because they had a great quarterback in Travis. It's not because they had a good quarterback with Tate. It's because this entire team has a winning mentality because they've got an amazing coach, Norvell. Norvell is probably the best coach in college football in designing a game plan around formations. So what he'll do is he'll create the same formation. And this is what's going to trick up the Louisville defense. He has the same formation for a running play. That same formation will have a screen pass out. That same formation will have a deep threat out of it. And that same formation will have a run option threat to it.
Right.
And it'll have a play action threat. So you have 6 different options from the same formation. And that's what makes a 1-week, 2-week preparation against Florida State really difficult. And they're also the lowest turnover team in the nation. They've only turned the ball over, I think it's 5 times this entire year. I think that will be the difference. As long as they maintain that, they will persevere to the end and win a fun game. I think a 31-28, maybe a 24-23, 24-20 type of game. It'll be close. It'll be in the 20s, I think. But I think Florida State will eke it out.
I hope we are right on our picks, guys, because all these games then are coming down, except for the Michigan-Iowa game, to pretty much last possession games. I mean, that's how we see it, to be honest with you. I think these games, I don't see a blowout on this ledger with just looking at numbers and matchups. Ralph, you still there? Did we lose you?
I'm here, buddy.
All
Fascinating
right, so,
stuff.
Yeah, next week, what we're going to do, we're going to come back. We're going to cover our predictions. We'll probably cover, well, let me go to Tom real quick. Who's your 4? Who's making it?
So I'm going to go with the upset of Bama over Georgia. I think that 29-game streak ends tonight or today. I think Michigan blows out Iowa and makes a statement, scoring at least 40 points, maybe even 50, and giving up less than 6. I think, obviously, Washington was already a pick of mine. And I think FSU squeezes it out and ekes it out, and we got Bama, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State.
I would love that. I would love that.
And I will just add one more thing. In that Army-Navy preview we're going to do next week. And we're going to talk about all the pageantry, and we won't bore people with that today. I'm really looking forward to that game.
I can't wait to do that. I can't wait for the release of their helmets and their uniforms next week. It's like Christmas for me every year to see that. The one year I remember Navy did the hand-painted warships on each individual warship on the helmets. I was like, that's amazing. So
I was lucky. Before you jump into your picks, I'm just going to max. So I grew up outside Philly, and so we used to go to the Army-Navy game every year because it was played in Philly for forever. And what was so much fun is watching Army's young running back Mayer back in the day, early 80s. Napoleon McCallum for Navy. This has always been a fun game. The pageantry of the game is amazing. Watching the cadets and the naval midshipmen students in their uniforms, it's such a beautiful thing. It's such a perfect thing. The end of college football season, the regular season. I love it. Like you, I love it. It's great tradition. And God bless these guys for signing up and serving.
Totally agree. My 4, I guess I'm going to go chalk, I think, unfortunately, because I'd love to see Michigan get that one spot. I see Georgia pulling that out. So I'm going to go Georgia, Michigan. Washington's got to stay at 3 or will be at 3. I think they jump Florida State, and then Florida State, I think, may win a close one. If not, then I like Texas, actually, because I think they're going to absolutely put up a number today to make a statement.
To your point, if Louisville wins, and I'm going to say something for Texas on that point. If Louisville beats Florida State, Texas deserves the spot.
Agreed.
Because they beat Bama, and they played a good schedule, and they're playing at high octane. They're playing 3 levels. Their special teams, their defense, their offense are all at high thresholds right now. Texas, I think, is one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the nation. If they're not 4th, they're 5th, and the first team out should push them in.
Totally agree. All right, guys. Well, Ralph, what say you?
All right, guys. So listen, this has been fascinating. I think college sports, college football especially, but college sports is just one of the last remaining bastions of this country. And this is why for me, it's so sad to see politics play a part in this. You got these organizations like the NCAA, which I think is all, it's just politicized. But I think college sports is just one of the last remaining. I'm not sure what word I want to use, but it's one of those things where you can really immerse yourself as a family, and just it's a wonderful thing. Because I my position on professional sports. I used to live, breathe sports, but I can't stand to watch a professional sport. It's awful. So I appreciate what you guys do. This is fascinating stuff. I was a little confused because I don't keep up with it as to the schedule and what's going to be played this week. So let me ask you this: what is going to be happening next week? You guys will be covering. Well, once this weekend is over, what happens next week? Is it the national? They start the playoffs. Right? They don't. Games, right?
No. Yes, no? Bowl games will start like December 15th or 17th, I think. But it's those bowl games, and you're going to hate to hear this, but they're no longer any good. And corporate sponsors are going to start pulling their money, and I know why. When you sell tickets to these bowl games for $70, $80, $100 a pop, and you go there and not one of their starters are playing because they're seniors or they're going to the league next year, why would you go to that game?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really sad. To Rick's point, I'm sorry. The Rick's point is these people now understand that their value is beyond the game. So they're going to hold out, and it's the quality of the game is going to wane. And I'm sorry, what I loved growing up in the 70s about college football was bowl season. And
so did I.
The Pool and Weed Eater Bowl. I don't care.
Yes.
The Liberty Bowl. It didn't matter what it was. This is what I loved about it. You had 24 to 30 teams, whatever, given the year, that could end the season with a win.
Yep.
And they have bragging rights for a year. These young people could it's optimism. You end the year with optimism. And what's going to happen is the contraction of the bowl system. Now you're going to expand it with the 12-team playoff, but then you'll have some of these other bowl games. But the only people to be interested are the fan bases of those few teams.
Exactly.
And to Rick's point, when those key players decide to hold out because they want to play in the Senior Bowl, or they want to just prepare for the combine, it's going to lose the interest for the average fan. And I think this is the beginning and the end of college football. Even though they're going super conference, it's all about television revenues right now. It's all about spreading out the television revenues, but that's also going to NFLize the college game, and the free agency is all. I mean, I call it the Kurt floodification of college football, where this free agency is now you no longer fall in love with a player because that player may be playing for your rival in 2 years, right? Or he may be on your. I'll give you one example. There's a young kid who's playing for one of my favorite teams. He didn't play this year, but he was probably one of the top 2 or 3 recruits from the team, and we're so excited about watching him play. And he's already put his name in the portal to leave, and it's making it tough to enjoy the process of college football like we used to. But I'm still there right now.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, and
All
Tom,
right, guys.
I'll tell you, I
Yep.
agree. Listen, NIL, because I smell NIL, right? This is what you guys are basically talking about. Did you see the
Mhm.
movie
Yeah.
National Champions?
No, have
You
not.
haven't seen that movie? You got to watch
No.
that movie. It's the movie about the beginning, how NIL got started.
Yeah, with
Rick,
the
that-
I know you got to run.
Yeah.
And good luck this afternoon
you.
for your Wolverines. And I don't think
Appreciate
they need luck. I think they just need to stay healthy. I think that's what
Yeah.
they need to do.
just stay
healthy.
focused too. They need to stay focused. Don't sleep on them. Just stay focused. Take care of business. It's TCB right now.
Yep.
Okay, guys, we'll catch you on the rebound. Great podcast. Love it. We'll next time we'll be covering the bowl games.
The
Upcoming
playoff
Army,
matchups and Army Navy. Yep.
Guys, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button. We'll catch you next time. Have a good one.
On behalf of everyone from Life, Sports, Music, and Beer, we thank you for tuning in. If you've got that story to tell, comment below. Smash that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell so you can hear other amazing stories.